Greetings, everyone. We hope that you have had an enjoyable week so far. This is Hump Day, so we're trying to get our groove on today. This is the West Metro NAACP series of forums. We have tried to educate the public on all of the candidates who are running for various offices in our community. Today, we have those who are running for Superior Court Judge. We have 3 outstanding candidates, and it is our charge to educate you and the public on the issues and the platform that these people are standing on. Your timekeeper for today will be none other than our secretary of the unit, Todd Ireland, and your moderator for today will be none other than the president, Joy Ponder Bates. I am Dr. Deborah Crump, and I am the chair of the West Metro Voter Education. If in the event you have other things that you think that we need to be aware of, please don't hesitate to put it in the chat and let us know. With that being said, I turn it over to Secretary Ireland. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome, candidates. Welcome, concerned citizens. Thank you for participating in this soon to be very informative event. I am the timekeeper, so I do want everyone to be considerate candidates of each other and not to take it too personal if I cut you off. So what I will do at the end of your time period to speak, near the end, I would state 5 seconds, just so you can know to wrap things up. With that said, I'd like to get things going, and I want to pass it on to our servant leader, Madam Joy Ponder Bates. Madam President.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary and Madam Voter Empowerment Chair. Good evening, everyone. Again, I am Joy Ponder Bates, and I will serve as tonight's moderator. Audience, we ask that you remain muted and you can be on or off camera. Also, feel free to add any questions that you have of the candidates in the chat, and we'll make every effort to ask them. Please note that all Superior Court candidates who qualified to run in Douglas County's race were invited to be a part of tonight's forum, and we are honored that all of them accepted and are here tonight. Mr. Hedge, Ms. Jones, and Ms. Wallace. We will proceed as such. Each of you will be allowed time to introduce yourselves. Then we will move into the question and answer session, where you will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. Please note that you will alternate responding to the questions, starting with Mr. Hedge. As our timekeeper, Mr. Secretary Todd Ireland, has shared, he will respectfully ask that you wrap up your comments quickly when you get to the end. Now, Candidate Hedge, thank you again for joining us this evening, and please introduce yourself, sharing what you'd like for us to know about you.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate you all putting this event on and, of course, inviting me here. My name is Zane Hedge. I'm running to be the next Douglas County Superior Court Judge, and I'm excited to have this conversation with you all tonight. I want to start by saying that I have been a longtime Douglas County resident. I've been here since I was 12 years old. I graduated from Douglas County High School, and I had the pleasure of starting and continuing a business with my father right here in Douglasville. I do believe that a judge is more than a decision maker. A judge has to be a leader in the community. And one of the ways that a leader shows that they are leaders by being connected with the community. Whether it comes from building Habitat for Humanity houses or serving as youth leaders in the community at local churches, mentoring, coaching, my history with the county has been longstanding and robust. I do believe that this evening we're going to have an opportunity to talk about my experience. We're going to have an opportunity to talk about my leadership, an opportunity to talk about my community service, and I look forward to those opportunities. I'm just so excited to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Candidate Hedge. Ms. Jones, thank you again for joining us, and please introduce yourself, telling us what you'd like for us to know about you.
Good evening. My name is Attorney Nicole Jones, and I've been a practicing attorney here in Douglas County and across the state of Georgia, actually, for the past 20 years. And I'm running to be your next Superior Court judge. I do greatly appreciate this opportunity to talk to everyone. Again, I've been practicing for 20 years, so I've done everything that will basically go in front of a Superior Court judge, from the adoptions to civil jury trials, criminal jury trials, medical malpractice cases, and anything that you would think of, basically. I do believe that a Superior Court judge needs to be someone who is well-knowledged in the law and who is also well-tempered, because as a practicing attorney, I do understand the different citizens that we have here, and that going in front of any judge for anything is a very scary time. And what they want to see is a judge that knows the law, the judge that will apply the law fairly to everyone, but also that will have a little bit of compassion at the time of their need when they're coming into the court. So I hope that you guys get to know a little bit more about me throughout this time, and we'll go through my background at that time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Candidate Jones. Ms. Wallace, thank you again for joining us, and please introduce yourself, sharing what you'd like for us to know about you.
Hi, y'all. I'm Lauren Wallace, and I am running because I have the most courtroom and jury trial experience, and I'm prepared to serve to be your next Superior Court judge here in Douglas County. I have been a prosecutor for 13 years, and I'm in court every single day. And also during that time, I have worked in DeKalb County and in Douglas County, and I have tried over 60 jury trials, which is a ton. So I am the candidate that has the most jury trial experience and the most courtroom experience. I also have a reputation of being tough but fair, and that's what you want in a Superior Court judge. And someone who will treat everyone with dignity and respect. As Ms. Jones said, you want someone with a good temperament and will treat everyone fairly. I also deeply care about this community. So I've probably lived here the least amount of time between the two candidates. I'm originally from Paducah, Kentucky, which is a small town. And we moved to Georgia 15 years ago. I lived in DeKalb County for 12 of those years, and then a little over 3 years here in DeKalb County. And I feel like it just quickly became our home. We were welcomed so warmly in this community, and it feels like a good place for us because it's been a good mix of my small town upbringing, but also the last more than a decade in a large city. So it's a good mix of that. So we love the county, we love the people in this county, and we quickly assimilated into the community to give back and make the community a better place. So I'm running because of my experience. I have a great reputation amongst the legal community, and because I want to give back to this community. So I am the candidate that is prepared to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Wallace. We did forget to share that the West Metro branch of the NAACP is a nonpartisan organization, and as such, we do not endorse any candidate or any party affiliations. And now with that, the questions. Mr. Zane, Mr. Hedge, it is important for a Superior Court judge to have an abundance of varying legal experience, i.e. defense, prosecution, criminal, civil, jury. Tell us about the breadth of your experience.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the question, because it is in fact a very important topic. So the first thing that I would say is that when you're talking about being a judge, you need to have a wide range of experience, and I'm pleased to say that I do. I've handled more than 1,000 cases, more than 400 cases as first chair. And those cases have been a wide array of cases, especially the cases that a Superior Court judge would hear. You're talking about cases like felony crimes. They also have jurisdiction to hear misdemeanor crimes in certain situations. You're talking about cases like divorce cases, child custody cases. One of my favorite cases was an adoption case. My sister is actually my half sister, and I was blessed to be able to put the adoption together for her and my mother. It's one of the cases that I'll always remember. But I've also handled property cases, and I have not handled an equity case as of yet, but those cases are extraordinarily rare. But on top of that, I have jury trial experience, criminal jury trial experience, as well as civil jury trial experience. Now, I've been a longtime defense attorney, and I was very intentional about not being a prosecutor. And the reason I didn't become a prosecutor is because, number one, I never had the desire to work for the government. But number two, what we know about the judges, not just in the state of Georgia, but across the country, is that the vast majority of judges are career prosecutors. And my personal belief is that when you're talking about the judiciary and you're talking about the judiciary representing the people, you have to have a wide array of vocations. And I'm not just talking about prosecutors and defense attorneys. I'm also talking about folks who practice family law, folks who practice business law. That's how people know when they come into the courthouse that they're going to get a fair shake, because everybody's on the same cloth. I also have the leadership experience that's necessary, because a judge has to have holistic experience. A judge needs to have legal experience, leadership experience, and community service experience, because that's exactly what a judge is. A judge is a legal mind. A judge is a leader, and a judge is a community servant. So I'm proud to say that I have leadership and community service experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Candidate Hedge. Candidate Jones, same question.
Thank you. That is correct. A Superior Court judge needs to have an array of experience on the court. And it is correct. They do adoptions, they do civil jury trials, they do civil motions. And I've done basically everything that has been in front of the Superior Court judge. I've done equity cases, I've done adoptions, divorces, child custody cases. Obviously, I've done the criminal cases. I've done murder trials, civil jury trials, up to the criminal trials of murder trials that I've done. And I've been, again, practicing for 20 years. I've been in a courtroom for 20 years. And to say that you can count how many times that you've had jury trials, to say that you can count how many times that you've had how many hours you've been in the courtroom. I've had to go back and look at stuff in just a month to see when I'm in the courtroom. And that is a lot of time. It's 20 years worth of experience on this. And you do need to have that experience. You need a judge that I have an LLM that I received in 2022, basically also going on on trial experience to make sure that I kept up with my trial work during COVID. So you do need a judge that knows all the different laws, because at some point in time when the case comes in front, you will have one party and you'll have the other party, and you need to make sure you're giving the right answer. And I've had prosecutorial experience just doing with the solicitor's office, but that is correct. The majority of our judges have been prosecutors, and we've had
20
problems in
seconds.
courts when the civil cases, because then the judges have to learn the civil aspect. So getting a judge that has a well background is best for the county.
Thank you, Candidate Jones. Candidate Wallace, the same question.
Thank you. So before I went to law school, I worked in a general practice law firm. That means you do a little bit of everything. So when I went to law school, I didn't really know what type of law I wanted to practice. My aunt she does insurance defense mostly. And I've worked in her law firm as well during while I was going to school for a while. So I thought maybe I would do something civil. But my third year of law school, I did an internship in the DeKalb County Solicitor General's office. And for those of you who don't know, the Solicitor General's office prosecutes misdemeanor crimes. And I absolutely loved it. I have a background of running a dropout reduction program for high school students. And I've always, the core of my being is as a public servant. So I could have gone into a variety of different areas. I could have done, corporate law. I could have gone into private practice as my opponents did. But I chose to be a public servant and work for the government as a public servant. And as such, you see a variety of people from all walks of life. And
20 seconds.
oh, wow. And that's what you have to, that's the people that you encounter as a prosecutor. You don't get to choose your clients. So I have extensive experience with the public sector. Also with being in court literally. Oh man.
Thank you so much, Candidate Wallace. Candidate Jones, how do you approach learning new things, and how will you get up to speed in the areas of law with which you may not have any knowledge or experience?
So the beauty about practicing law is that we have our CLEs, which is continuing legal education. And normally what I do before I take a case or anything, I will make sure if there's a CLE out there, I can go online and watch that CLE and learn from the people who've done it and get from there. If there's a new case coming in front of me that I have no idea of or not an understanding 100% on, it's also research, going through, doing the legal research to see the background, to see what the courts have said. Because as judges, we basically look to the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court and the statutes to see what they said on how we're supposed to apply the facts that are being presented in front of us. So it's not a decision basically on how we feel. It's based on the law, based on how that law is interpreted by the Court of Appeals and how it's interpreted by the Supreme Court of Georgia. And we can also, as a judge, and what I do in my regular practice is I reach out to other people who may have done that, people who I know have experience behind it, and ask them questions and say, what is your opinion on this? I have no problem with reaching out and finding out what they feel this should go. So in seeing something that I've not seen before, I think we have unlike other places, we have an avenue to be able to get the information rather quickly and to come up to date for the most part on how to do it. And also judges do get a bench book, basically, that goes with all the different laws and everything that we can go and look at rather quickly. And we have training too.
20 seconds.
Thank you so much, Candidate Jones. Candidate Wallace, same question.
I think maybe I'll be able to get this in the length of time since Nicole covered it pretty well. So she's correct. I actually don't disagree with anything that she just said. And I would just add that we also have access, all lawyers do, have access to Westlaw and LexisNexis, which are legal researching sites. I also have, like Nicole, I would have no problem reaching out to people who may be more of an expert on a topic than I am in order to get their feedback. But you're based, as a lawyer and as a judge, you are just looking at legal precedent and applying the law to the facts that are in front of you. I would also like to use some of this time, since I ran out last time, to say that I do have, I've tried I can't stress this enough, over 60 jury trials. Lawyers want to be in front of a judge who knows how to try a case. And that is not only trying a case, but also knows how to run a courtroom. As a prosecutor, you're the only one in the courtroom who knows everything about that case. That's even including the judge. So I'm used to running a courtroom and will be able to translate that very easily into on the bench.
Thank you, Candidate Wallace. Candidate Hedge, if you would answer that same question.
Yeah, thank you so much. So it's true. One of the best things that we can do is seek out people who are smarter than us. But the first step to doing that is recognizing that even as the judge, we're not always going to be the smartest person in the room. So we have to have the humility to be able to seek out folks who may have that knowledge, may have that experience, and then of course not be afraid to seek them out. One of the things that I've done over the last 2 or 3 years is I've sought out expert attorneys on particular topics that I may not be well versed on. And I've been blessed that many of them have offered to be mentors for me. I've sought out retired judges on particular legal nuances, and I've been very blessed that many of them have continued to make themselves available. But I would also say that it's important that we don't just look at those folks who are the prototypical folks. One of the things that you'll find is that members of the court staff are incredibly well-knowledged. And it's not always going to be another lawyer who has the answer that you're looking for. Those folks who work in the courtroom every day, those folks who work in the clerk's office every day, those folks who work as staff attorneys and other positions are always a breadth of knowledge, and it's important to recognize them as well. And then the last thing I'll say, just personally, is one of the things that I do is I read at least 2 books a month. And they don't even necessarily have to be legal books, because what it does is it allows me to keep my mind fresh and keep my ability to think and think sharply sharp. So I think that those are the 2 or 3 things that are most important when you're talking about that sort of issue.
Thank you, Candidate Hedge. Candidate Wallace, what experience do you have managing a staff and caseloads?
So my current position is a Deputy Chief Assistant District Attorney here in Douglas County. And in that role, I manage a team of people who handle every felony case or crime that happens in Douglas County. We handle all of those cases on the front end. So we're literally responsible for every felony crime that comes through our office. So that is I'm managing the staff. I also am I run our internship and externship program in our office. And so I manage law students and college students and high school students who come into our office to learn about the criminal justice system. I also am training the new lawyers who are recently barred or are new to prosecution. And so the office has entrusted me with that large responsibility. They're confident in my abilities as a lawyer to pass on that knowledge to the younger attorneys, or the attorneys with less experience. So that is, well, I'm also running the dropout reduction program through our county school system in Kentucky. I also am a membership chair with the Junior League of Douglas County, and I've managed to double the membership of the league
20
within the
seconds.
last 2 years. I've doubled that population or that membership. And I also serve on the board of the Georgia Association of Women Lawyers. So I have a ton of experience in being a leader and also teaching other lawyers.
Time.
Thank you, Candidate Wallace. Candidate Hedge, same question. What experience do you have managing a staff and caseload?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. So one of the things you learn when you start a law firm is that you have to be responsible for absolutely everything. So that means that you're responsible for bringing the clientele in. That means that you're responsible for managing the caseload that you create for yourself and your firm. You're responsible for all the logistics on the inside, whether you're talking about client intake, whether you're talking about case investigation, whether you're talking about the policies and procedures of the law firm. And so when you're running a small business, you get a lot of experience to do those sorts of things. One of the things that I've been really blessed about is that when I got out of law school 10 years ago, my father immediately treated me like an equal. We built this firm from the ground up. And so whenever we needed to change something in the law firm, it was my responsibility. My dad is extraordinarily traditional. And so he's loath to want to change things, but he gave me that freedom. And so one of the things that I've been able to do as a part of being a partner here in the firm is not just exponentially increase our caseload, but increase the efficiency of the way that we manage the cases that we have. My dad is a very careful person, and so he doesn't like to take on too much if he can avoid it. But what I found is that with some good policies and procedures, with a little bit of faith and a lot of trust in what we've built, we've been able to manage it and manage it well. And then the last thing I'll say is that that is in conjunction with all the other extracurricular activities that we have, whether you're talking about the different ways that I serve the community, whether you're talking about the different ways that I've gained leadership experience. I've managed to do all of those things at the same time as managing and running a law firm, AKA a small business. So the experience that I have when it comes to
20 seconds.
thank you so much. When it comes to managing the logistics, managing a firm, and managing a caseload are robust.
Thank you, Candidate Hedge. Candidate Jones, if you will answer that question.
Well, much to my chagrin, I'm about the oldest candidate here. And so when we talk about managing the courtroom and staff, I've been managing basically staff and everything for over probably close to 30 years, but we won't call that out on there. I've started off before going to law school, I was a manager at the various jobs that I had previously. When I worked at Paul Gostein, Fraser and Murphy, which is a law firm in Atlanta that just goes by Paul Gostein, I was a manager over our file clerks that they created there. And then I went to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. And at the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, I actually went through a training through the federal government about management and going and managing the staff. And of course, I have my own private firm. So I have staff there that I have to manage. And Zane is correct. You do have to worry about everything for the private firm. So I have the staff. At the 11th Circuit, I've had numerous cases and a wide caseload at the 11th Circuit when I prepared the court orders and everything that we've done there. So I'm used to handling high caseload. I'm also used to handling high profile cases from the 11th Circuit. Even in private practice, I've done a lot of high profile cases. And as into running a courtroom, again, working at the 11th Circuit, I know how courtrooms are. I know how they were ran, but a lot of it would be relying on also talking to the staff that's already there. So I figured the courtroom is going to be just like the law firm, managing the staff that's there. There's actually less staff in the courtroom than I do in my current law firm. But I believe that with
20
all
seconds.
the years of experience, the management should continue on.
Thank you, Candidate Jones. Candidate Hedge, How do you deal with your personal views when having to make a judgment that you don't agree with, yet it is correct in the eyes of the law?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So, one of the most difficult things is recognizing that as an attorney, whether you're talking about being a prosecutor or a defense attorney, sometimes you're going to clash with some of the decisions that you have to make. One of the great things about being a lawyer is that when we pass the bar, one of the first things that we do is we take an oath. And a part of that oath is to make sure that we treat everyone fairly, that we uphold the Constitution, and that we do everything that we can to make sure that we maintain the sanctity and integrity of the law. And I'm sure, like my competitors here, we all take that oath extraordinarily seriously. One of the things that I've done as a defense attorney is I've tried to always make sure that while I'm zealously advocating for my client, that I'm keeping an eye on the other side. One of the things that I've done is I've established a strong relationship, not just with other prosecutors, but also with law enforcement. The fact of the matter is, as a defense attorney, most of the time, you're not law enforcement's favorite person. You're usually not prosecutor's favorite person, just because of the job that you're required to do. But what I've been able to do is I've been able to establish those relationships because of my reputation of being an excellent attorney, my reputation of having high integrity, being a person of strong character, and being fair. And as a matter of fact, I've done that to such a degree that I've actually been endorsed by the top law enforcement official here in Douglas County, Sheriff Tim Pounds. You know, you don't get that kind of support when you're somebody who only looks at things from one side or who only has a particular view. And because of the work that I've done, I've been able to show that I am an individual who already combats the appearance of bias in the work that I do.
Thank you, Candidate Hedge. Candidate Jones, if you would answer the same question.
I'm sorry, I was taking notes. Can you repeat the question real quick?
Absolutely. How do you deal with your personal views when having to make a judgment that you don't agree with, yet it is correct in the eyes of the law?
Your personal views, I mean, in looking at it and saying it, you'd have to say you may not agree with what the law is, but the law is the law. That's the reality that we have. However it is interpreted by the Court of Appeals, however it is interpreted by the Supreme Court, that's what it is. And so I don't sit there and say that my personal views is going to come into effect. My job is to say, this is what the law is, this is how the law is applied, and this is how it is applied to these cases. So there's not an aspect of what my personal views are on it. And I do understand a lot of people currently think that and see that, but if we want a change, and I tell people all the time in the common cases, if you want something different, you'd have to go to your legislator and you have to ask your legislator to change the law. That's the law. That's how the law shakes out. And unfortunately, that's how we have to follow it.
Thank you, Candidate Jones. Candidate Wallace, same question.
So they're right. And in terms of as lawyers, we're bound by the oath to uphold the law. And so we've all been doing this long enough that I have no doubt that all three of us will have no problem applying the law. Because that's what we've been trained to do, and that's what we do in everyday practice of the law. So I want to just make people more familiar with what we do or what I've done as a prosecutor all of these years with making decisions about how to handle cases and how to uphold the law. So prosecutors are actually held to a higher standard than other lawyers. We have special rules of conduct that we have to abide by. And so prosecutors are not allowed to bring forth cases if there's not probable cause. And so we have to evaluate each case. Now, do I read a file and I'm like, yep, they might have done that, but can we prove it? And so if there's not probable cause, if we don't have the evidence to prove it, whether I think they did it or not is irrelevant. I can't go forward with this case unless we have the evidence to prove it. Also, I want to address the the difference between prosecutors and defense attorneys. Prosecutors are the ones who are upholding the law. I can't tell you how many times I have had a defense attorney come and say, yeah, they might have done this,
20
but
seconds.
it's really stupid, you know, it's just marijuana or whatever, and therefore we should not go forward with prosecution of it. And I have to just tell them it's still the law. We still have to uphold the law. I also want to endorse, or I want to address the Tim Pounds endorsement. He did endorse Zane Hedge prior to anyone else being in this race. So he's not wrong in that he is endorsed by Tim Pounds, but Tim Pounds is also very supportive of my
Candidate
campaign.
Wallace.
Thank you, Candidate Wallace. Since we're talking about that subject matter, can you all share, and we will start with, well, never mind, let me just stay in order. Candidate Jones, in your current role, have you seen racial disparities in the judicial system? And if elected, how do you plan to deal with it so that there is justice for all?
I think everyone has seen racial disparity in the judicial system. Yes, there is racial disparity in our judicial system. And the racial disparity in the judicial system on how we see it once it gets to us deals a lot with the sentencing. And sometimes it even deals with prosecuting and what cases the prosecutors will actually go forward with, and which cases they may dismiss. As a judge, what I was set forth is that whatever I will look at the person's criminal history, I will look at the crime and the evidence that they may have, and have a consistent sentencing for everyone under that aspect. So if one person has this criminal history and another person has the exact same criminal history, that's how we will deal with the racial disparity. That's pretty much not much we can do on the other end, other than making sure that other people are not a certain class of people. The minorities basically are getting extra sentences on their cases. We do have an issue that judges cannot really handle as much, is that a lot of the minorities are not allowed to do drug court. We're not allowed to participate in aspects like that, and to figure out how to get around that other than having them go to jail. If you look across the state of Georgia, there are less Black and brown people in our drug courts than anywhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Jones. Candidate Wallace, the same question.
Yes, there is. I agree. We've all seen some racial disparity in the criminal justice system. So I think that the way you combat that is to be aware of it, and you're looking to make sure that this isn't happening. So as someone who is on the inside and has the one who's had the most opportunity to make these changes, let me tell you, I'm sorry. Let me tell you how I have been fighting this for the last 13 years. So when I first came to Douglas County, and remember, I prosecuted in DeKalb County for 10 years, a very diverse population. I think one of the most diverse in Georgia. And so when I came here, and I'm running the pre-charging unit and handling, opening the files and creating the files and gathering up all of the evidence, everything on the front end, I noticed that they were putting the mugshot as the very first document on that. When you open the file, the first thing you see is the person's mugshot. And that struck me as a problem, because I don't think that that should be the first thing that you're considering, is what somebody looks like. So I went to Dahlia Racine, the district attorney, and she agreed that we should make the change to put that on the bottom of the file. So that's not something that we're considering when we're looking through all of the reports and the evidence. I also
20 seconds.
To talk about the accountability court programs, because I have noticed the problem with participation from people of color. And so I have been working over the last about 6 months or so to increase the participation
Time.
of Black participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Wallace. And remember, there is a 2-minute time limit on answering the questions. Candidate Hedge, in your current role, have you seen racial disparities in the judicial system? And if elected, how do you plan to deal with that so that there is justice for all?
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Full stop. The fact of the matter is that's one of the reasons why I became a defense attorney in the first place, is because the disparities that we're talking about often involve young Black men, of which I am, and unfortunately of which I've had the experience. When I was 19 years old, my father bought me a car for college. It was a 2002 Mitsubishi Lancer, and he painted it as a gift, and he painted it black. Black's my favorite color. And I was pulled over for violating what I believe was a failure to maintain lane. I was going around another vehicle. And the officer in particular asked me if the car belonged to me. And I said, well, my dad bought it. It was a college gift. He said, well, I know that it's black here, but it's showing up in the system as red. I'm going to need you to step out for a second. And it was very clear that at that particular time, being an ignorant 19-year-old, he was flexing his knowledge of the law that I didn't have. And so this is very close to me. This is very personal. And so one of the ways that we combat those disparities, number one, is recognizing that law enforcement officers are the first line of defense. We know that they have discretion, not nearly as much as the judge does, but we know that they have discretion. And when you have the opportunity to build relationships with law enforcement, you can help them to exercise that discretion more fairly. Once that happens, you're going to have fewer cases that actually end up coming into the court system that reek of disparity. But when you have those times that they do, well, now you know that you've already gone through at least 1 or 2 different barriers to try to lower that disparity. And then the difficulty is not nearly as high when you get into the courtroom. At that particular point, the judge can use his or her discretion to ensure that the law is fairly applied, that the sentencing is fairly applied, and that the kinds of outcomes that happen in
20
those
seconds.
cases are a lot more in line with the outcomes that you would see in other cases of similar import.
Thank you, Candidate Hedge. The next question will start with Candidate Wallace. When there are no mandatory sentencing or sentences, are you willing to utilize equally effective and less expensive alternative to prison sentences? If you have recommended any such creative or innovative sentencing in your career, please share.
Absolutely. So I don't think that prison is the first answer. So we know, and I've seen in all of my years in public service, that the majority of crime is committed by people who have substance abuse issues and or mental health issues. And so the answer for these people to hopefully get them to stop committing crimes and stop victimizing our community is to treat those illnesses. So when someone is, and something one of the other candidates said about equally administering sentences kind of set wrong with me, because you're looking at everybody's individual criminal history. It's different for every single person. And each case is different. So everyone cannot be treated exactly the same. So you have to individually tailor your sentencing. And as the prosecutor, you're the one that is making these recommendations to the judge. So I have been coming up with sentencing recommendations my entire career. And that would be something new for my opponents to do, to consider, how to best handle the case for everybody involved, because that's what the prosecutor does, is to look at what's fair for the defendant, the victim of the crime, and the community as a whole.
20 seconds.
And so what's best for the community as a whole and everyone involved is for that person to get the treatment that they need.
Thank you, Candidate Wallace. Candidate Hedge.
Yes, ma'am. If you'll repeat the question for me, please.
The question is, when there are not mandatory sentences, are you willing to utilize equally effective and less expensive alternatives to prison sentences? And if you have recommended any such creative and innovative sentencing in your career, we'd like for you to share them with us.
Yes, absolutely. Because the fact of the matter is incarceration is not always the answer. The fact of the matter is some people who commit some crimes do have to be incarcerated, but a lot of times it's not the answer, and it most assuredly shouldn't be the first answer. And I'm just going to touch on one issue in particular. One of the biggest problems that we face are folks who get bench warrants, and bench warrants come when they miss court for one reason or another. Now, of course, going to court is an extraordinarily important thing, and every person should do their absolute best to make sure that they are present in court when they're supposed to be. But we have to take into account that sometimes folks miss courts for extraordinarily good reasons. The top two that come to mind are they miss court because if they don't go to work, then they get fired. If they get fired, then they can't provide for their family. If they can't provide for their family, then you find that they might then engage in risky behavior that ends up putting them in a position where they have to face the judicial system in the first place. Or if they have to stay at home with a small child, because obviously if they don't do that, then they'll be in trouble with defects and CPS. One of the things that I've seen and one of the things that I would replicate is something that I saw several years ago from one of our current state court judges, Brian Fortner. He had an individual, state court, he handles misdemeanor cases. He had an individual who had missed court, and that individual came to court after they were supposed to be there and explained to the judge exactly what was happening. And what Judge Fortner had them do is he had them sit on the front row of his courtroom all day from 9 to 5. And while they weren't able to do any of the things they would rather be doing, whether it was going to work, whether it was going out to lunch, whatever, they learned a very important lesson. That lesson was how important it is that you don't miss court, but they weren't sent to jail to do that. And so I think doing innovative things like that is what's going to make sure that folks
20
who
seconds.
end up having to come to court recognize how serious it is. And then when it comes to sentencing in particular, you can use those sorts of creative and innovative ways to craft a sentence that makes sense for the individual based on the crime, based on the history, and based on the outcome that's best for the community.
Thank you, Candidate Hedge. Candidate Jones, same question.
So mandatory sentencing has been attacked across the United States for a lot of reasons because it does not take in consideration the factors that the majority of us are talking about. And we found ways, which I would disagree on one thing that Ms. Wallace did state, is that defense attorneys, we look at the case, we have to look at why our clients may be committing a crime, what their background is, and bring it up to the prosecutors and say, hey, this happened because there is this mental health issue, or this happened because there is this drug issue. And we come back and say, how about we resolve this case in this manner? That's where you go through with the negotiation. Sometimes the prosecutors do start it off, and sometimes, like a lot of times with my cases, the defense attorneys look at it. What we do have, and it's another aspect of it, we have to look at all the evidence and all the case law in all the cases to see what they can hand against our clients. So yes, we do have a major substance abuse problem. We do have a mental health issue. Understanding that Georgia just really started working a lot more, and in the United States started working on their mental health issues, that they're realizing the crimes since basically before around about 2020, we changed our laws a little bit better. But this has been something new in creating the mental health courts and the substance abuse courts. I believe in both of those courts, because if we can stop the underlying issue of the drugs or the mental health, then we can stop the crime issue. And I believe that going to alternative sentences for a lot of people is best, but you also will need someone that can identify that underlying issue. So once we identify that, then we can do the alternative sentencing.
Thank you, Candidate Jones. Candidate Hedge, what qualities do you think are important for a judge to possess? And tell us a judge you admire and why.
Sure. A judge needs to have a series of qualities, not just when you talk about their experience and their leadership, but also personal character traits. A judge needs to be someone who's temperate. A judge needs to be someone who has deep understanding. A judge needs to be someone who is professional and civil. A judge needs to be someone who understands the importance of humility. One of the things that I said earlier that I really want to reiterate is, as a judge, yeah, you sit in the big chair, but you're not always the most important person in the room. As a matter of fact, I would argue that least of all, you're the most important person in the room, because the judge acts as a referee. The judge is to make sure that each party gets a fair shake. And so if you keep that in mind, then you're going to make better decisions going forward. One of the judges that I admire is one that I just mentioned a second ago, Judge Brian Fortner. He used to be the district attorney here in Douglas before he was appointed to the state court back in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And he's been somebody who I've always gone to for advice, for wisdom. He's one of the judges that I absolutely enjoy practicing in front of. Another judge that I admire is Judge Cynthia Adams, because in spite of being the first Black female Superior Court judge, she's always had the reputation of being stern but fair. She's always had the reputation of being someone who listens and who listens intently. It's really easy to try to make up your mind, especially when you have a preconceived notion about someone. But she's always been very open. And so I think as the next judge, the judge has to recognize that all those character traits are important, but then they've also got to be able to identify those character traits when they're talking about other people who are in that same position.
Thank you, Candidate Hedge. Candidate Jones.
I would agree with Zane and all he stated on what a judge needs to be. That is correct. Humility, you need to be able to listen. You need to be able to reach out and actually have some compassion, really. And you have to have temperament. When you're looking at the qualities of a judge and seeing the things day in and day out, understand that a lot of the cases do weigh on the judges as well. So we need to make sure that each person is coming in front of us is a new person. We're not just sitting here saying it's the same old, or this is, that. We recognize it's a new person and have the compassion also for that person and where they're at. As for the judge that I admire the most, again, I've started off at the 11th Circuit, so I've been around judges. I have judges in my family. So, I mean, it's a thing. What I admire the most about judges are the ones that actually, like was stated, will listen to the actual case, will not let their own personal biases or let their own personal information, knowledge try to seep in, and they form an answer or they form a response. We've all heard about judges that yell at people in the courtroom. We've heard about the judges that are not listening. And we've also heard about, and we've had judges that come up with a decision or come up with a statement that is not correct, but because they have their own personal bias in it, they'll say it across the bench. And that's not the type of judge that I want to be. I understand that even from the attorneys, we're in that courtroom, we're working there, and everyone deserves respect and everyone deserves the humility on it.
Thank you, Candidate Jones. Candidate Wallace, same question.
Thank you. So again, I agree with everything they stated in terms of the characteristics that are important for a judge to possess. I think it is important for a judge to have integrity and compassion. Also, for them to be willing to admit that they're not the smartest person in the room, because they are, and so that means that they are going to have to listen to both sides, because it's going to be the attorneys in the courtroom are going to know more about that particular case than the judge is at any given moment. And so you have to be willing to listen to both sides fairly and fully, and in order to make your decisions. I also think that it is important to be honest, and honest with your answers, honest with your interpretation of the law. I think we've all been in front of good judges and we've all been in front of really bad judges. And as someone who is in court every day, the judge can determine the attorney's quality of life. It's no fun to work in a courtroom where the judge is, mean, hateful, yelling at everybody. And so
20
I
seconds.
respect those judges who come in and are friendly, happy to be there, and they make everyone around them more comfortable and at ease, and in a good frame of mind.
Thank you, Candidate Wallace. Candidate Jones, describe any pro bono work, community engagement, and/or philanthropic endeavors you have. And if elected, how will you use your position to benefit them?
So I did Boy Scouts of America. I've done mock trial. I've been doing feeding the homeless for the past 17, 20 years almost. So I've done community service work for over 20 plus years in doing it. How would that help us in the judiciary? I mean, I believe that the judges need to get out. People need to see the judges. One thing that I do recognize is that the judicial race, less people vote in that race than any other race. Less people know about our judges than any other race. And a lot of it has been because the judges are not out there. The judges are not participating because the JQC does not allow us to do a lot of things like take in money. We can't raise funds. There's certain things we cannot do as judges. I can still see and going out and feeding the community as long as it's safe. We all know how part of the times it's becoming a little bit unsafe in the courtroom and around with the judges. We've had judges that have been killed. So that's part of the reason why sometimes the judges are not out there. But I still see myself collecting, being a part of the community, feeding the homeless, collecting stuff for the homeless. And I think that reminds me of where we could be, where we could have been, and how everyone deserves the respect, no matter where they're at in their walk of life.
Thank you, Candidate Jones. Candidate Wallace, same question.
So my entire career is as a public servant. But not only do I give my, well, we all know it's not really a 9-to-5 job, but it's not only do I do that in my career all day, but also my free time is given to the community because that's my personality. That's who I am. I am a helper. I want to help people. And so I've mentioned about the Dropout Reduction Program. I have also mentioned being a member of the Junior League of Douglas County. So let me tell, the Junior League of Douglas County is a women's organization that builds leaders in the community, and what we do is community service work. And so we do things to raise money to give back to domestic violence awareness facility and programs. We have raised this year, our initiative is to raise money for free wash day for over 100 members of our community. And we partnered with a local laundromat to do that. So if you needed to go wash clothes, you could do that free of charge. And we've also raised money to put a washer and dryer into one of the schools. And because we know the stigma behind, if you don't have clean clothes, then the snowball effect that has on, on learning and just your overall life. Also, when I've also mentored a refugee girl from Pakistan.
20 seconds.
Who moved here, and I mentored her through her middle school and high school days in order to make that transition. So really my entire life is community service.
Thank you, Candidate Wallace. Candidate Hedge, same question.
Thank you so much. I'm very proud of the work that I've done in the community and will continue to do. I've been a board member of several nonprofits, most recently and currently the Good Samaritan Center. I've been a mentor in several aspects. And back in 2015, the DA's office had a mentorship program, and I was a part of that when it started. The juvenile court has a mentorship program that I'm a part of right now. I have a young man who's 15 years old that we're getting on the right track, and I'm really happy about that. I've been a mentor through the Douglas County school system. I've been a motivational speaker at Douglas County High School as well as Stewart Middle School. I've been a leader at one of the largest churches in the county, Douglasville First United Methodist Church, and I'm currently a youth leader at Crossroads Church, my home church. I volunteer with Burnett Elementary with their Star Student program. I volunteer with Mason Creek Elementary. We actually just served some really nice different culinary delights to the kids a few weeks ago. I've built Habitat for Humanity houses. I actually participated in building several of the houses over on Military Way on the north side of the county. I've been a member of Rotary Club and I've been past president of that. But my pride and joy has been the work that I've done with mock trial. I've been a mock trial coach at Alexander High School. I've been a mock trial coach at Douglas County High School. I've volunteered more than 800 hours with mock trial because it's that important to me. And as a matter of fact, as of yesterday, I was working with Brighton Academy, and we're going to be starting a summer academy program for mock trial so that the 8th graders, it's going to be open to 6th and 7th graders as well, but so that the 8th graders can get their first taste of mock trial before they matriculate into high school. So I'm extraordinarily proud of the work that I've done in the community. And as your next Superior Court judge, I will continue that work. It's that important.
Thank you, Candidate Hedge. Candidate Wallace, describe how you characterize your judicial philosophy. Someone in the chat put it this way. Would you say you are more conservative or progressive in your ideology?
So I have always worked in prosecutors' offices that are known for their progressive prosecution. You know, prosecution is traditionally known as having a more conservative outlook on things. So I think that my experience is a good mix of the conservative with the progressive, because I do believe in holding people accountable for what they did. But I also know that maybe these crimes are being, well, not maybe, they are being committed by people who are suffering from mental health issues or substance abuse issues. And so the more progressive thing to do is to route these people toward treatment versus jail or prison. And so I am progressive in that regard, while at the same time believing that knowing that victims also have rights within the criminal justice system and standing up for those rights as well.
Thank you, Candidate Wallace. Candidate Hedge, same question. Describe how you characterize your judicial philosophy. And as someone in the chat said, would you consider yourself more conservative or progressive ideologically?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. The short answer is that I'm actually more moderate. And I think that you have to be moderate as a judge because your job is to be as unbiased, as fair, and as impartial as possible. As a matter of fact, moderation is one of the traits that's a part of our judicial seal. When you're making decisions, you have to consider the impact of your decisions, not just on the folks who might be harmed if you're talking about a criminal case, but also on the effect that it will have on the community, the effect that it will have on the accused, and the effect that it will have on everyone who has been affected by it. Same sort of thing if you're dealing with a civil case, whether you're talking about a divorce. You have to make sure that you're taking into account the effect that your decision is going to have on each individual party. So what that means is, you can't be willing to just use your discretion to lock people up and throw away the key. But at the same time, you've got to be willing to understand that there are going to be times where you have to make the hard decisions. And if that involves someone being incarcerated, that's the decision that you have to make. So the short answer to the question to the person in the chat, whoever it is, thank you so much for that question, is my philosophy is more moderate. It's taking the even road because you have to be able to balance both sides of an issue in order to make the most seasoned, sound, and rational decision.
Thank you, Candidate Hedge. Candidate Jones, same question.
In looking at if you're conservative or if you're progressive and applying it to a judge. Now, if you ask me as an attorney, I would have a great answer for that. But as a judge, our job is, yes, we listen to what the facts are. We listen to what the person who's in front of us is. But mainly we are bound by the statute. We are bound by the case law. We are bound by the things that come before us. Because if we don't apply the sentencing the way that our legislators required us to sentence it, then it comes back on appeal and it makes the county pay more money. So on that aspect, as a judge, I'm bound by whatever facts is presented in front of me and then how the statute is. If you're asking progressive, I am not afraid, I am not against, and I move for saying drug court, or I move forward, and that's in me being an attorney. You know, alternative sentencings, I push that every day. But if we're thinking about as a judge, and you're asking me as a judge, I am bound by whatever the statute is. I'm bound by the law, and I'm bound by the facts and everything that is presented in front of me. I am not going to sit here and say, well, I'm going to give you extra time and throw you in jail. That's not what's going to happen either. Because the statute can say you can have 5, you can have 20. I'm going to use the statute. I'm going to use their situation and apply it fairly and evenly
20
across
seconds.
to what the people have.
Thank you, Candidate Jones. And now we will endeavor to ask some of the questions that have been placed in the chat. Shayla Creel Davis would like to know, how will you handle backlogged cases? We know that many of the courtrooms in Douglas County are backlogged. And so we would like to know, how will you handle getting your cases current, your case logs current? Oh, and that is starting with our Candidate Jones, forgive me.
Okay, so we have a backlog because of COVID, but we also have a backlog because Douglas County has been short a judge for numerous years. So our caseload in Douglas County has always been a rather high caseload because we've not had that 4th Superior Court judge that we finally just got approved for. And I believe we need to go ahead and put in a case management system. We do not have a case management system in the different courtrooms that will follow the cases. Judge Warren started having a case management system in her courtroom to move the cases along, but I think we need to do what other counties have that have a high caseload and have a case management system to move our cases along.
Thank you, Candidate Jones. Candidate Wallace, same question.
So the position that we will take is in Judge McLean's courtroom. And he's done an excellent job of managing his caseload. I agree, though, that Douglas County, both state and superior courts, have an extremely high caseload compared to other counties because we are short on judges. They approved the state court judge. They did not, Nicole, approve. It didn't go before, it didn't pass the Senate. So as of right now, we have not been approved for a 4th judicial seat, Superior Court judicial seat. But in terms of managing a caseload, you do have to have the case management system. I think that Judge McLean had a pretty good case management system in place, and I don't intend to tweak that as much because it was working.
Thank you, Candidate Wallace. Candidate Hedge.
Yes, ma'am. I would concur with both what Nicole and Lauren said, and I would just add one additional nuance. I think one of the ways that we are able to handle and try to address this case log backlog is by having court more often. One of the things that I've done is I've actually already spoken to several members in the court, and I've told them that when I'm elected that we are going to have court more often. And I'll tell you that there's some folks who were not terribly happy to hear that news, but it's one of those pills that you have to swallow. You know, you do a little more hard work on the front end so that you can create more efficient systems, and that so going forward you don't have to face that same issue. But otherwise, I would concur with what both Lauren and Nicole said about making sure that we double up on our resources when it comes to investing in a proper case management system.
Thank you, Candidate Hedge, and thank you, Shayla Davis Creel, for the question. The next question is from Commissioner-elect Whitney Kenner Jones. And she wants to know, has any of the candidates served as judge pro tem? And Candidate Wallace, if you will start.
No, as a prosecutor, we're not allowed to have take on any other positions. So no, I have not.
Thank you. Candidate Hedge.
No, ma'am. The opportunity to serve as judge pro tem usually comes from the juvenile court. I spent a lot of time with Judge Peggy Walker when she was the chief judge there, but having that actual experience, I have not been able to acquire.
Candidate Jones.
No, I've not. I've not done judge pro tem, but I agree that's typically in the juvenile court. And I've been basically the defense attorney in the juvenile court more than doing the judge pro tem.
Thank you. And thank you, Candidate-elect Whitney Kenner Jones, for the question. The next question comes from Mr. Siegel, and his question is, do you believe in jury nullification? And Candidate Hedge, if you will start.
This is going to be a very brief answer, only in the rarest of circumstances. So a judge sometimes will sit as a 13th juror when there is an issue with the decision that a jury has made. But those situations are extraordinarily rare, as they should be, because the judge's job isn't to impute his or her view on what decision the jury should have made. It's simply to uphold the decision as long as it complies with the law.
Thank you. Candidate Jones.
I would agree. Jury nullification should not happen. It should be if the judge is letting in, or if the defense attorneys or the state is doing the objections properly, then the information is not going to go in front of the court. We do have at times where you have to do a mistrial. I don't know if they're trying to state jury nullification and conclude with the mistrial, but that sometimes happens, maybe not just from the attorneys, but sometimes you have a witness that goes off the ramp that we could not control on both sides, and then a mistrial is necessary. But jury nullifications are not that prominent. And the other closest is when there's an appeal, and basically based on the appeal, which you'll have the jury nullification, that deals with whether or not evidence was entered in properly, whether or not the judge ruled on objections properly, and whether or not there's multiple things, but part of those could be that. And also whether or not the defense attorney effectively represented their client properly. And that may be where he's getting jury nullification as well. But that is on the appellate aspect and looking at the entire case later on.
Thank you. Candidate Wallace.
So there's a couple of different ways that you can have jury nullification. And one is what the other candidates have addressed, where the jury has made a decision and then the judge decides that the jury has made the wrong decision and then reverses that. So I do not think that a judge should do that, because the jury is the finder of fact in that situation. They didn't ask for a bench trial for the judge to decide. They asked for a jury trial for the jurors to decide. Therefore, that should remain in the hands of the jury. But also, just in case, he was talking about the jury nullification where the jury makes a decision that is not based on in the law, like they just have completely ignored what the law is. Yes, that happens. But no, I still would not, overturn a jury verdict because they clearly had their reasons for whatever decision they make.
Thank you all for answering the question, and Siegel Election Network, thank you for posing it. The next question comes from Shantis Jenkins Floyd, and she would like to know, what do you believe should be done to protect judges? I know, I think Candidate Jones mentioned the threats that are rising for judges, and so this question is as a result of that. What do you believe should be done to protect judges? And we'll start with Candidate Wallace.
So I don't know if the other candidates have actually had this experience with their line of work, but as a prosecutor, you are often the target of animosity as well. currently as we speak, that is an issue. And so what happens is generally the FBI is monitoring people's social media. They've identified people who may be the ones who are likely to make these threats, and they'll monitor them and make sure, that they're not doing anything too crazy. But if they do, then that they will report that threat to you so you can take appropriate measures. And the county, I live in the county, so they've been very good about, patrolling my neighborhood to make sure that, there's no immediate threats. But I think that's really all you can do, is just to closely monitor the situation, to make sure that you stay safe.
Thank you. Candidate Hedge.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So I think one of the things that you can do is to defer to the direction of the courthouse law enforcement. I've had conversations with the folks who run the security in the courthouse, and I've had conversations about what those security protocols might look like when I'm elected. And one of the things that I've been told is, well, that's part of the reason why we have you go into the back of the building, for example. That's why you have your own elevator, for example. Now, my particular philosophy is, as an elected official, even as a judge, knowing that it is a dangerous job, it's important that you are visible. It's important that the community sees you, that they know who you are, that they know that you are approachable. But Lauren makes a good point. Folks are gonna threaten you when they don't like what you do. I've unfortunately had that happen with some opponents of some of my clients. Same sort of thing. But what we have to do is we have to defer to those folks who are in charge of maintaining that security. And obviously, when you're outside of the purview of the courthouse security staff, then you have to take appropriate steps for yourself. You have to take steps like knowing alternate routes to drive home. You have to take steps like knowing how to protect yourself and your family in your home and in your neighborhood. So I think that when you do those two things, you've done what you can do to ensure that you have maximized your safety. But you also have to understand that as a part of being a judge, wanting to be a judge, it's a part of the risk that you take.
Thank you, Candidate Hedge. Candidate Jones, if you will round out that question, what do you believe should be done to protect judges? Candidate Jones, did we lose? Oh, there you are.
You did. I refreshed to come back on. Thank you. For the same question, the sad reality is, when I started at the 11th Circuit in 2000, and that is when we had our first basic bombings. They did car bombs of the federal judges, and they had issues there. And where we started looking at and recognizing that the judges themselves could be a target when people are upset with decisions that are being made, because the judges have to make hard decisions. The judges' decisions are not going to be liked by everybody. That's just a fact of it. Unfortunately, moving now, we've seen in the news that a lot of attorneys have been targeted as well, because opposing counsel, particularly in a lot of family law cases, there's been attorneys that have been shot because they don't like the decision. It's been easier to think of attacking a person as opposed to, speaking and resolving cases. And I do agree. Courtroom staff, we do have a good courthouse staff there for the security. I talk to them all the time. They do have measures set up for us. Everyone's put in after the Atlanta issue, Fulton County issue, when the judge was attacked on the bench, where now you go in the back, you have the screened area where it's protection. So your main protection, where you have to look at that you're on your own, is when you're in society itself, when you're in the community. And you do need to be diligent and watch out for yourself while you're in the community.
Thank you, Candidate Jones, and thank you, Shantice Jenkins Floyd, for the question. The next question comes from Alex M. And her question is, Alexis M., I'm so sorry, is, do you believe it's the judge's job to interpret the law? or follow the letter of the law? Judge Hedge, and then, please forgive me, Candidate Hedge.
Yes, ma'am. So as a trial judge, we have the opportunity to look at the precedent that has been set already. One of the great things about our particular judicial system here in the United States is that we have higher courts that ensure that the right decision is made. And so most oftentimes we'll already have an answer because a higher court has already interpreted the law. So the short answer to the question is our job is to apply the law as it is written. And if the law is ambiguous for whatever reason, then we have an additional resource to take a look at what the higher courts have said about that particular law or those particular sets of laws. And we're really fortunate in that regard. Now, there are very few opportunities where a unique part of the law comes up, maybe a nuanced legal concept. In that situation, a lot of the times, you'll make a decision, and then that decision will ultimately get appealed anyway, because one of the parties may not agree with the decision that you've made. So you still have that check and balance from a higher court, ensuring that the decision that you make is the right decision. So our job as a trial judge is to apply the law as it is written, knowing that we have the backdrop of at least 2 other courts who will ensure that we've made the right decision. And if we haven't, that we've been corrected.
Thank you, Candidate Hedge. Candidate Jones, same question.
As a trial judge, your job is to follow the law and to apply the law. There is very little time. Okay, so July 1st is when most of our new laws come into effect that will affect the criminal and the civil aspect. At that time, we may have to interpret what the legislator said. But even with that, every time they write a law, usually the legislators, we have the legislative notes and we see what the intent was behind that law. So then we have to apply it to the case and the facts. But yes, we do have the Court of Appeals. We do have the Supreme Court. Now, when we're talking for us, when we're talking about the law, it's not just the statute, it's also the case law. So it's not a, hey, the statute says this, and then maybe we'll go, we have to look, it's not just the statute, we have to look at the case law to see how that was interpreted and how it's supposed to be applied. So we're more following the law aspect of it and applying it to the set of facts before us. The job that we have that's hard is each case, as you may think it's a drug case, you may think it's a drug case, you may think it's a drug case, and I say it like that, but sometimes there's different set of facts that go with that have to apply to it. So it's not even just 100% of interpreting or following, it's figuring out what the facts are as well as with the case itself. So we look at it, pretty much follow it. Every now and then we do interpret to see what the legislator said. But after that, it goes through the big people that interpret as the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court.
Thank you. Candidate Wallace, if you would close us out on that question.
Sure, I won't take that long. So because we're all saying the same thing, so there's statutes, as Nicole said, there's statutes and there are case law. So statutes, we're following the letter of the law, but then when you look at case law to determine how it's interpreted, you're seeing if you can find a case that is as similar as it can possibly be to a case that's already been decided. So you're trying to kind of match that up in order to follow the law as it's already been interpreted.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Alexis M., for the question. Now we will ask this question, starting with Candidate Jones. Do you feel it is your obligation to report judges when they are unethical, abusive, or otherwise violate judicial code of ethics? And have you ever done so?
I've not reported someone to the JQC. I need to think to make sure as an attorney, I haven't done a report. I do understand the question. Should we report them? Should there be an aspect on it as attorneys? If there is a very egregious case, yes, it should be reported. Because if we keep a judge, unfortunately, that is not upholding the law, we keep a judge that is routinely abusive in the courtroom to everyone for an extended amount of time, then that doesn't do anything. That doesn't help the community. That actually hurts the community. That hurts the community, even with the sentencing, even with the civil cases. We've done that. We've had that. And it's unfortunate where there's a lot of times where you question, and there's times where you can report to the JQC and the JQC doesn't do anything. And then there's an aspect where the JQC can do something. I know a couple of cases where the JQC, it was reported to the JQC based on the judge's temperament and everything that was happening, but it was not reported by me. Someone else got there beforehand and reported it. And I can just say, yes, that is correct. This is not how it's supposed to be. This is other factors that you need to look at. But I mean, the JQC is a body that decides whether or not they want to look at a case, whether or not they want to look at the judge. So yes, we can, and yes, we should, because if we're going to uphold and help the community, we need to do that.
Thank you, Candidate Wallace.
So I have never personally reported another judge to the JQC. I have been in front of judges. I think we've all probably been in front of judges who did not have the temperament to be a judge. They were awful, just mean to everybody. I've been in front of, there was a judge in DeKalb County who was repeatedly reported to the JQC. And JQC is the Judicial Qualifications Committee. They're the governing body for judges. So she was repeatedly reported to the JQC. They would come out, she would act good when they were there to see what was going on. And so nothing was ever done. But everyone in the legal community that practiced in that county knew the reputation of these judges. So that's why it's important, I think, to vote in candidates who will be who the community can be proud of while they're on the bench, who has the proper temperament, who is honest and fair and compassionate, because you don't want a black eye on the community by someone who is on the bench.
Thank you. Candidate Hedge.
Yes, ma'am. We have a duty to do that, especially when you're talking about repeated offenses, because the whole point of a judge being in the courtroom in the first place is to ensure that everyone gets a fair shake. And it's extraordinarily difficult to do that when the judge can't even keep his temper, or when the judge can't even show up to court on time, or when the judge can't even maintain some of the dignity that's required when you're talking about a position like being a judge. One of the things that I would say is that professionalism, civility, and being of a dignified nature are the hallmarks of a good judiciary. And when those are missing, then it calls into the question about whether the judiciary that we have is one that serves the community and serves the community with character, integrity, and trust. So I would say yes, especially and particularly when you're talking about repeated offenses and or when you're talking about particularly egregious offenses.
Thank you so much. This wraps up our question and answer session. And we are going to allow each one of the candidates 1 minute to have a closing statement. And we will start with Candidate Wallace, and then, well, let's go in the order that we started. Candidate Hedge, Candidate Jones, and then Candidate Wallace.
I just really appreciate the NAACP putting on this forum. It's been extraordinarily important, and I'm really glad that so many folks signed on to see exactly what it is that each of the candidates, including myself, has to say. I want to end by saying that this race is very personal for me. You know, I moved here when I was 12 years old, and I've been blessed to be able to have been reared and invested in by the community. And when I was in high school at DCHS, I said that I was going to come back and I was going to serve my community. And that's exactly what I intend to do. I've been extraordinarily blessed because people in the community have invested in me. They have not given up on me when I could have made the wrong decision. And of course, I've been blessed to have so many opportunities to give back to the community. And so for me, it's extraordinarily personal because this is the next way that I give back to my community. I love Douglas
20
County,
seconds.
and this opportunity to engage in public service will be nothing short of a dream come true. I look forward to talking more with each of you all. You can follow me on www.hedgeforjudge.com, Zane Hedge for Superior Court, and of course on Instagram, HedgeForJudge 2024. Please reach out to me. I'll make myself available if you have any questions and want to meet me personally. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Jones.
Thank you for this time to talk to everyone. I do agree. I've been an attorney here and for the past 20 years. I think this is the biggest time where we can get past just being an attorney, being in a courtroom, and actually meeting out more of the community that we all work in. I want to continue being a servant leader for Douglas County, continue helping and working on the behalf of Douglas County. And I agree, and I believe that my background, my education, and my experience will make me the best candidate for a Superior Court judge. I also agree that the temperament and the humility and everything is the best for Douglas County. You can find me on NicoleJonesForJudge.com or go to my Facebook page, Nicole Jones for Judge, and even Instagram. But I look forward to meeting everyone, and I look forward to continuing serving Douglas County in any capacity, especially as the next Superior Court judge.
Thank you, Candidate Wallace.
Thank you. So, do you want a surgeon who's only operated on 1 or 2 patients? Or how about a doctor who's been disciplined by the American Medical Association? No one wants that. That's why I'm running, because I have the experience, knowledge, reputation, and passion for this community to serve as your next Superior Court judge. Please reach out to me with any questions. I can be reached at www.wallaceforddouglas, all spelled out, .com, or on Facebook and Instagram at Lauren Wallace for Superior Court Judge. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Wallace. We are now going to turn over for some final remarks from Dr. Deborah Crump, and then I will bid you all a good night after her.
First of all, I want to say thank you so very much to the community for coming out. We had a very vigorous forum here tonight. The questions were great. We appreciate the candidates for coming and joining in. We have 2 upcoming events that I would like to bring your attention to. On Thursday, April the 18th, there will be a meet and greet of all candidates, school boards, commissioner, chair, Supreme and state court judges, and it will be at the One Family Resource Center at 5903 Stewart Mill Parkway, Douglasville. It will begin at 6 p.m. until 9. You will have an opportunity to meet the candidates in person at that time. On the following week, on the 22nd, we will have the commissioner, the chair for commissioners, Tarina Carthan, and Dr. Ramona Jackson-Jones, and that will be on the Wednesday of the following week. So we will get those flyers out. Any information that you want to know about any candidates, please go to the website for Metro NAACP, and you will see our flyers that will announce our various events. Let me make a last correction. The next event after the 18th is in person. The next one is on the 24th. And I saw a lot of political candidates online. If in the event that you are interested in having a forum for the candidacies that you are running for, please reach out to us. Madam Secretary, if you would be so kind as to put our emails in the chat so that people can see it. And what we'll need from you is your headshot and what you're running for, and we will make sure that we set that form up for you. Thank you so much, madam, for allowing me to serve.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for all that you do. This concludes our question and answer session. Thank you to the candidates who thought it not robbery to join us this evening so that the citizens of Douglas County and others who are concerned can hear from you and gain a better understanding of your views. It is our goal to edify the beloved community so that when you cast your ballot, you are making an informed decision. Let's again thank Dr. Deborah Crump, our Chair of Voter Empowerment, for all of the important forums that she is doing. She is doing an excellent job for Douglas and Paulding County, and we appreciate it. Thank you to all of you for joining us this evening to hear from the candidates and for asking the questions that are near and dear to you. Please know that we do this because of you. We hope that you have gained a better understanding of the people who seek to represent you and you are closer to a decision that aligns with your best interests. We do post all of our forums on our YouTube channel, and so you can go there to see this and other forums that we have held or that we are going to hold. And with that, we say good night and take good care of yourselves.
Thank you.